Hey all, Grolo here. Here we go. Part 3 of the Star Citizen Live Tech Talk with Benoit. This one is about big ticket items, I believe. And this should finish out the reaction series on this mammoth 3-hour Star Citizen Live interview thing. So I have no idea what the big ticket items are. Let's dig in together and find out.
All right. So, part 3.
Big tickets.
Oh, stretch. Stretch, part 3. What is my hair doing?
It's looking fabulous from here.
Oh, weird. All right. This section I call big ticket items. These are various issues that at some point in the year have generated some amount of angst, aggression, frustration, or any other word you can think of to describe Tyler Wicken. He's watching. Let's start with the big one: freight elevators.
Yeah.
Now I already did a big 5-minute thing explaining. Oh, there's a delay. He just popped up. Freight elevators. Where are we at now? What's happening? What happened? What do you want to tell us about freight elevators?
Let me pull up my notes.
Okay.
So freight elevators is one of our hero squads, right? Now your previous interventions, that came way too late in our planning, right? And so that's one thing that, I think that if we could go back in time, that squad would have started way, way, way earlier. And so I've got a bunch of discussions.
I'm sorry, to be clear, work had started earlier. We hadn't had the hero squad on it.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
AKA the Joker card.
And so let me go through some of the stuff that we've been going through on freight elevators in general. So to start with, obstruction issues, right? And so a lot of the issues that we ran into were related to how the elevator actually detects obstructions and or contents. And so, for example, blocking the doorway, item being positioned on the roofs of the planetary freight elevators. Now, a lot of this, by the way, I'm going to talk more about the planetary versions of it, which are 10 times worse for some reason. But in terms of obstructions, like you could leave items on top of the elevator, and then it was detected as an obstruction, right? And so these obstructions, first of all, the checks were super rough. And so they would go, there's something, I'm not going to move, which is what a bit like, come on,
So somebody would put a smoltz bottle on top of the freight elevator.
Correct.
And the whole damn thing would stop working.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. That would brick the whole elevator until that was removed. But incidentally,
MedPen. Oh my God, it was MedPen so small.
Yeah. But that's even worse because there's a problem with how the items are set up, right? And so when we create a prop or we create an item, there's a bunch of things that go into it. Physics proxy, weapon proxy, all kinds of things that go on top of it. One of them is the bounds of the item, right? Which is not. There's multiple bounds in case you thought it was just a sphere or like a shape or a rectangle. There's more than one bounds, but long story short to say that a lot of items have incorrect bounds. And so what that does is that when you leave them on a flight elevator, they might clip into the elevator, right, itself. And so couple that with the bad obstruction checks, that could cause some really crazy exploits. Like, for example, leaving, I think, a MedPen on the freight elevator, it would clip through the platform. You couldn't even see it. So you'd be like, there's nothing on it. And then it would still block it, right? I think that actually is not completely fixed. So we still have to, the squad still has to get to all of these items. And so for the bounds issue, what we're doing is we're adding a lot more.
I've seen that with mining bags and a bunch of other stuff.
On how the things are submitted again beforehand. So we're revisiting all bounds for items, right, and how their setup is made to make sure that none of them can be in that situation. So we're kind of doing a system-wide check on this in order to make sure that when we get into these situations, it's going to work the way we think it should. There's also
That sounds like a pretty Herculean task. I've been in those situations before where, like, you reach a certain critical point in a project and you realize that a ton of previous work was done even just slightly incorrectly. And sometimes there is an automated, scriptable way of addressing these things. And sometimes, unfortunately, it is sheer human power to correct the history of missteps and bring things kind of up to par with the current state of the system. And it sounds like that's unfortunately the state they're in with these bounds issues. I'm no expert on bounds. This sounds like front end geometric stuff to me, but I can empathize and relate a little bit.
This is all you'll see. It's all super interrelated, right? Items that would get destroyed but would no longer have geometry, but would still be considered obstructions. And so that was a very egregious one, I think, that we saw very early, which is there was a way for you to destroy an item. Its geometry would disappear, but it would leave the entity present. And so now that's it. That elevator is gone. Like, you need tools to see that entity, right?
I mean, at least with the med pen or something, people could zoom in and try to scan the pad, try to scan the thing, and try to find it. People in chat are already like, "Oh, great! You've just told everybody how to do it." It's like this. It's. We're also telling folks how to fix it. We're trying here. It's a delicate needle to thread here, but. That at least there was something people could do if they knew about it, which is why we're talking about it, to try to find it and remove it. This next one though, the geo's gone.
Yeah, that's it. This one was the worst one, right? And so the thing too with the freight elevator bugs related here, like some of them were set up of the actual freight elevator geometry, right? Actually, that was a regression. So it was a bug that got fixed and was reintroduced. Which is the shape, because we have multiple types of freight elevators, right? We have like the horizontal one. We've got ones that are vertical, some with doors, some without, and so there was some of those best setup. The planetary ones were especially egregious in that case, and so there's still some bounds check to be added. But this is all when you got all these messages about obstructions, and that was all related to this. One of the other issues we had with freight elevators was actually one of the first ones we had to fix, which is that the freight elevator is set up into two things. There's the kiosk and then there's the platform, right? And so the kiosk hosts the manager component. He's the one that's managing the stuff, right? And the platform is kind of slave to the manager. So there was an issue where, depending on how an area would stream in or stream out, the platform or kiosk would stream in first or stream out last, right? And this caused these two components to now be disconnected. So they would not find each other anymore. And so in those cases, that entire location was dead. Like that was it. That location, game over, right? Because they would never find each other. There was no model in place or process in place to go and try to fix that. And so this is, in part of what we do on the hero squads, we've done the same with the transit system, which is we introduce self-healing approach, right? And so in this case, the system would actually retry to connect. So if a manager doesn't have its connection to its platform, then it would get retried, right, over time until it actually connects. And so this way, even in the case where we do run into an issue where they disconnect, they could still reconnect. And so that solved the issue. That was actually rolled out in a hotfix.
Sino says, are elevators CIG kryptonite? Elevators are the kryptonite of every game development team in the world. Elevators and doors.
Yeah, doors and
elevators, man.
Doors and corners, man. Let's continue on our list of bugs with freight elevators, right? The
streaming and thing's interesting. Seems to me like that would just be a natural problem with streaming entities in general, which, I mean, is something that Star Citizen has to master just because of the sheer scope and size of the sandbox that we're playing in. but it sounds like there's some foundational things that still need perfected to meet that reality, is what I'm kind of hearing there, which, makes sense. I mean, we're in alpha. It's not going to be perfect at this stage of the game. Retry logic, sound solution. Seems legit.
UI and platforms could get out of sync, and so this is where the platform will have content. So there's clearly a box on the thing, and the UI is showing that it's empty, right? And so that prevents you from, basically makes the whole thing inoperable, because now you can't ship your box at all. And so in this case, I think that the reconnection, the streaming reconnection, actually solves this by self-healing, but also the UI will requery multiple times to be able to make sure it's always updated. This is a side effect of us of the game teams trying to cache a bit more data than they should, and so now it cached an empty elevator. So that's a weird state.
The old saying goes, 2 hard problems in computer science: naming things, which we've already addressed. We're just going to prefix everything with star. Boom, that problem's solved. And cache invalidation. Sounds like they're still working on that one.
So a bit of background on how the platform actually works, right? So you've got your inventory system, right? Your warehouse, that's where your things are stored. The inventory system has that, right? So you can query for items in it. You get the list of what's in it. You can unstow items from it, which means bring them into the game world and physicalize them, or you can stow them into it. The freight elevator and the ship cargo platforms are actually using an abstraction on top of that called the inventory container. And so the inventory container can be open or closed, right? And so we had an issue so what that means is that when the inventory container of the platform is closed, that means that all of the items that are physically on it are actually stowed. It's opened, it means that all of the items that were in this inventory container are in the game world and being acted upon. So when you unstow things on your platform, that's what happens. There was a weird case where, in certain cases, if there was a delay in the back end, right? So the back end systems for all these operations have queues of operations that run, and so they can handle a delay, right? But in this specific case, there was a weird state where what's actually unstowed in the state of the container would be desynchronized. And so we've added another repair flow for this that would actually detect the state of it and actually resynchronize it in the cases where that would happen. This was because we didn't properly handle failures. And so in the case where an unstow would fail, the state would now be, in a weird situation. And so now we do the proper error handling, which is another thing that we've changed in our processes for development, is that error handling is now part of code reviews. So we really need to make sure that sounds like basic, right? But I mean, I'm just saying the way it is, right? Some cases were not handled, and so you need to handle those failures.
You wanted open development.
Yeah, that's it. It's all warts and issues, right? And same thing for door states, right? So
I can almost hear people in the audience being like, "What idiots!" You'd be surprised. You would be surprised.
Whether the door is open or closed, right? After stream in and out or server crash, right? Would sometimes clash. And so the kiosk can think the door is closed, but it actually is open. And so we do the same now. We can actually properly set the flow back properly. So one of the lessons we've learned with freight elevators in general, and all the issues I just went through, and the reason why we ran into them, is need way more multiplayer testing. I think that the major key behind it is that the teams have spent time on the in-hangar elevator, right? So we ran into some issues with in-hangar elevator for sure, and there's still issues there. But the big difference with the resource drive event was that we were driving players to the freight elevators, and there's more than one player interacting with it, right? And so that's one area where we have improved our testing and our testing approaches so that they're properly tested multiplayer and not just as when we reach PTU or in focus test. Now it's like part of the general testing for these open areas.
this is not just like, again, as an outsider or somebody unfamiliar with the way things work, I can see you thinking that Benoit is just blowing smoke at this point. Like, what do you mean way more multiplayer testing? Like, this is a multiplayer game. Like, that should be part of it. But the most difficult problems and bugs and issues to identify and reproduce are those that involve what we call race conditions, right? A race condition is anytime a state of the software, and when I say state, that's just like, I mean, you know what state is. State is just a point in time, like a way that the program can be at any given time, like the current state of it. Anyway, a state that is only achievable by a certain sequence of events whenever those events are occurring in unpredictable orders. And so they call it a race condition because, like, say you have 3 different actions that are being done, right? And depending on the order in which those actions resolve, the state will be different. And you may have actions A, B, and C. And sometimes, or let's just say most of the time, the order of completion is A, B, C. Sometimes the order of completion is B, A, C. Very, very rarely, like 0.1% of the time, the order of completion is C, A, B. Like, that's the kind of thing we're talking about, and why he's saying that multiplayer testing is important. Because it could be that the state that drives a particular bug can only be observed a fraction of the time that C, A, B is the order in which the actions resolve in. And so if C, A, B is already 0.1% of the time, is only occurring 0.1% of the time that this sequence of actions unfolds, and then the state is only observable in a fraction of that time, you know, you quickly get into a situation where like 0.001% of the time is whenever you see this issue arise, but then you throw it into the hands of the players, and you have 12 different players fighting over a freight elevator, and all of a sudden CAB becomes more dominant, and therefore you're seeing this issue more readily or all the time, or even if you still only see it rarely, like it breaks it in such a way that like it remains unusable for an extended period of time, right? So yeah, it's legit. Like, it's hard to test this way too. Like, again, like, you'd be surprised how like testing real world scenarios can be exceedingly difficult. It's very easy to write tests that test the academics of an implementation. Like, that's very easy. You make an assumption, you write a test, and sometimes it's hard to even realize that the test itself is making assumptions. Often you're testing ideal scenarios, or you're testing the system that is operating in such a way that makes CAB impossible, right? In order to test that possibility, you have to test the system under a completely different type of load or a completely different type of usage pattern. And again, it can be really hard to replicate all this in tests. And that in and of itself is a ton of work. If you think that like the feature work that they're doing, or the development of the favorite ship you've been waiting on, or engineering, or whatever it is, like just implementing the feature itself is a lot of work, right? Well, replicating these scenarios and testing all these different states and scenarios and load patterns and all this stuff, that can be even more work than implementing the feature that you've been waiting on, just to put it in perspective. And it's why in a rapidly changing alpha/beta product, you won't always see that level of rigor. Like, this is to be expected. Like, if, especially in a product where the foundation is changing and the ladder in between the foundation and whatever level you're working on currently is kind of shifting and changing under you, like, implementing all that rigor could be a waste of time because you're going to have to re-implement it and re-implement it and re-implement it. And that's why you don't see the level of rigor and stability that you want to see. And you're not going to see it. It would just be, it would be wasted effort.
You've mentioned something called self-healing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What's self-healing?
Well, so self-healing is basically when we add functions to a system to detect that it's in a bad state and attempt to fix it, right? And so
self-healing is not optimal, by the way, but it can often be a great tool in preserving system stability. Self-healing is usually reactionary, and so you can get blips of incorrect state still. And not only that, but self-healing systems typically put their own load on the system. Imagine like the perfect system would be one in which the code path progresses through a series of states, and every error that could ever be encountered is always dealt with as the problem arises. So you never end up in a bad state. Like, that would be the perfect system. There's no extra load on the system because everything is handled as part of the logic branching, which is basically the way the program makes decisions, those that I just spoke over. In a system that supports self-healing, the system itself is kind of watching for bad states, and that act of watching is additional load. And so that's why I say it's not optimal. However, it's often worth the additional load because many times it can be quote unquote easier to identify that a bad state has been achieved, easier than it would be to understand all the different paths that lead to the bad state. Does that make sense? In addition to that, self-healing can be very beneficial because when a new mechanic or mechanism or logic path is introduced into existing code that has already been kind of buttoned up and nailed down, maybe the developer that has introduced this new path or new feature or whatever makes a mistake. And they, unbeknownst to them, introduce another route to an invalid state. And maybe it was not obvious to them, it wasn't apparent, they didn't catch it in testing. But the thing sitting in the background that is watching for bad states has a chance of identifying that and picking it up and keeping the user experience sound and smooth, even though this new path was introduced. Now, on top of that, it's usually wise to introduce metrics and statistics and whatnot to these self-healing systems so that if something like that were to occur, new developer introduces new thing into the game that introduces a new way for bad states to be achieved. Oh, but the watchdog system or the self-healing component of the system catches it. Now it needs to make the rest of the team aware, hey, I'm catching a new pattern that is leading to bad states, so that ideally you can go back, circle back, and correct the code that was introduced that is yielding these problems, right? So that's kind of the circle of life there.
This is you could call it a kludge in some areas, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes
kludge.
it's not the right thing. But I think that in this case,
Exactly.
for a lot of the systems that we have, where we are working on a replacement, for example, and we're trying to keep this one running, self-healing will come in and basically rectify the situations, right?
Yeah,
we have
exactly what we were just saying.
The way our game is made with our streaming system.
I did not watch this
some trivial things
previously,
in a normal
by the way.
game.
This is the
very
first time I'm
complex.
watching this. This is just
sometimes we have run.
This is just more evidence that like we're on the same page, and this is good information.
Into these issues where the game teams can't really identify what's specifically causing an issue. They just know it happens, right? And so
exactly what we just said.
in the past, we used to wait for the key engineers that can actually decipher these conditions to come in. But these guys are obviously, everybody's swamped with work. And so sometimes the delay was so long that you guys as players would have to deal with the condition for long periods of time. And so self-healing is basically an approach where we're telling the game developers, well, while you're investigating the proper root cause for this, provide a self-healing alternative, right? Which keeps the system running properly. And they're at self-repair, basically.
There's an interesting, I don't know, maybe not, maybe interesting is not the right word. There is a forever thing that happens in chat. It's happened during the course of this show. It's happened in every YouTube comment, everything. So this idea that every developer can work on every single thing, that if this person
false. Oh my gosh, and that is such a source of like, there's so many cringy posts on forums like Reddit and Spectrum that I see that make this assumption. And I always like, I just kind of facepalm whenever I see this stuff. Like, it's the age-old, why are you working on new ships whenever we need engineering in the game? Or why are you working on new armor sets whenever we need Planet Tech V5, right? Oh my gosh. The reality is that software engineering is a very broad discipline. It would be like expecting a cement truck operator to be able to do the electrical work in your house, because they're both under the umbrella of construction. That's what it's like, right? It makes no sense. Like, you would know that that's not a reasonable expectation you should have, but for some reason, people look at software engineers this way and think, like, if you're a software engineer, you should be able to do anything. But people specialize, even within an organization. Like, there's so many systems within an organization that even if you do have similar skill sets, over time, your aptitude for any given service or system or whatever at a company, like, hones in, right? Your aptitude progresses for that system, and you develop an affinity to it. So yes, you could pull that developer off sometimes and put them on another system with similar fundamentals, like maybe it's written in a similar language or using similar patterns. But even then, you're going to sacrifice velocity over here, because if they stayed here, they would be able to deliver results faster than moving them over here, and they have to learn this new thing about the business, or this new, we call it business logic, right? So even whenever the skills are aligned, it doesn't always make sense to move people around because of the aptitude and affinity you develop over time for these various systems. There's no way that I know of to combat that. And trust me, pointy-hair bosses all over the world want to combat that. It drives CEOs insane that we have this. I have been at so many companies where everything's moving along fine, right? And it's, you have this team that owns this and this team that owns this, and eventually some pointy-hair boss up the chain will hear that, you know, this thing is progressing slowly because we only have 3 engineers that understand it. And he will know, but I have this other system over here that has 12 engineers, and I don't need 12 engineers there. Like, this is where the important work is. And it'll drive them crazy that they can't just move engineers like marbles to where they need them. And so then they'll get this bright idea that we're going to destroy the concept of ownership at a company, and everybody's going to own everything, and we're going to do this great thing where we can just move engineers around wherever we want them, and then the entire organization begins to stumble. And I'm ranting here because I've been through this. I've seen organizations that embrace ownership. I've seen ones that declare war on it. And explicit ownership always wins.
Person is over here making a loading ramp for the Zeus. They could be better spending that time over here fixing network code and stuff. It's like, why are you working on that when you should be working on this? And the answer is almost always because that's what that person does.
Correct.
They can't do anything else. That's not what they're. It's like looking
Hey,
at,
man,
looking
Jared.
at a cook and asking them if they can fish. It's like, well, it's
Sing
sort
it.
of kind of related. It's game dev, but it's not the same thing. But even within the disciplines, that's a common thing. But even within the disciplines, even within engineers, there are still focuses and affinities and stuff. And there's still, even within a field.
Hey,
of
he used
engineers,
my
there
word,
are still
affinity.
many things where, and it's no slight against the person or whatnot. It's just
Absolutely not.
this person has that specialty and that person has that specialty and that
Absolutely.
person has that specialty. And you often come up to a thing where it's like, well, we can't make any progress on this until we can get it in front of this person.
100%.
And that person.
And I mentioned how ownership always wins. Like, developers like ownership. Like, you begin to develop kind of almost a pride in the thing that you own. You become invested in it. That's why ownership always wins, because whenever you work at these companies that really declare war on ownership and they don't want developers growing roots in any one project because they want the flexibility of moving human resources around like they're marbles, like, developers become detached from the things, right? Like, they don't get the chance of showing, like, over a period of time what they're capable of. They lose that. I'm drawing a total blank on the word I'm looking for, but they lose that connection to the software, and that's important in my experience. So it sounds like CIG is pro ownership and pro developers developing affinities to products and services within the company, and I think that is thumbs up, A+ from me. The other way does not work.
Person has already got this other thing in front of them and that other thing in front of them and stuff. So it's another way. It's not, it's another way. I don't know what I want to say, what I'm trying to say here. It's not,
We're all at a loss for words,
I'm
Jared.
trying to illustrate that it's like
But I got
anything,
you.
like
I get
priorities
you.
and like anything else. There are usually, if you're asking the question, why aren't they fixing this or why aren't they working on that? The answer is almost never. It's because we don't want to. It's because it's in line. It's in line. It's just that simple. It's in line.
Right.
Yeah, we do have a lot of hyper specialization too, right? And so you're right. Like even game programmers are not necessarily interchangeable for everything, right? That said, our approach, by the way, for our game teams is very multidiscipline, very fluid, right? Which does enable a lot of this, right? Like we have engineers who are able to go from one system to another in the game code, right? But when you have to do cross-discipline things, that's where now you need a concerted effort, and that's when it gets queued up.
Before we move off of freight elevators, what's
It's not
the
just
thing
game
that's
developers, it's
happening
all developers.
in like you go to Wicolo, you'll put all of your recipe stuff on the thing. It goes, okay, it takes it, it goes down, it completes the mission, and then doesn't give you your thing back up. And now you're just out those items because the mission completed, but it hasn't given you your reward, and people have just wasted their time on a Wicolo. What is that?
So I think that most of those issues are a lot of those are still being investigated actually right now, right? In order to really figure out what's happening. It is, these systems are intertwined, right? The reward system, for example, is part of the mission flow, right? Whereas the freight elevator is just the vessel, right, to deliver this. And so there's many reasons and timing why this could happen, right? And so
one thing that just crossed my mind here is we're very focused on freight elevators, and I can see people in the audience kind of getting worried and thinking, like, if it takes them this much time to get freight elevators right, right? Like, how long is it going to take them to get engineering right? Or, I don't know, transit or whatever other system is coming online, hacking, right? To which I would say I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Because the muscles and the skills that they are developing as they troubleshoot freight elevators are going to be applicable across systems. We mentioned, I think, last video that we've only been in a multi-server world for really a short amount of time. That's one aspect. Other aspects are just the way that race conditions are manifesting in this code base, the way concurrency and queuing is manifesting with the systems that we're building, and all of this stuff is somewhat related, and the learnings that are coming out of freight elevators will accelerate the resolution of these types of issues and other systems down the line. That's how it's going to work. Mark my words.
I don't have a proper answer for this. I didn't dive on this one specifically, but I can tell you that I know the team is actively working on this one because it's a key. I mean, it's especially for Wicklow rewards. Like internally, Wicklow rewards is like the hey guys, come on, let's get it priority on this one.
Chat's starting a campaign to send Wicklow to Kleischer.
That'd be a nice Christmas gift.
So at the beginning of freight elevators, we're gonna from freight elevators, we'll move on to our next thing because there is a kind of an obvious sounding solution to this when we're talking about putting med pens and smolts bottles on things, and then entities where the physicality has disappeared, but the entity is still there, and it seems like an obstruction. Cleanup, entity cleanup seems like it'd be the obvious thing. Just crank that dial up to 500 and clear that shit off of there every 2 minutes, and it seems like a good fix. Talk to me about entity cleanup. We're seeing ships left everywhere. We're seeing trash left everywhere. The Raptor's not here yet. What can you talk to us about entity cleanup?
Well, so one thing I think we touched on this a bit in January, right?
I want the Raptor.
One of the things that we put into 4.0 was the beginning of some physics cleanup, right? Now, since then, right, since the beginning of the year, we've unified a lot of the cleanup systems, right? So, namely, we had an abandoned vehicle tracking system. We have the physics intersection cleanup system. We have the actual density manager, and so now all of this has been kind of unified into one platform. And so what we're able to do with this now is we have density classes. So depending on the type of item, we can define the density class, which basically allows us to say no more than X in a volume of Y for this kind of item, right? And obviously there's way more parameters. I'm just trying to keep it simple so we can understand what it does. We've recently added the ability for designers to basically change those density classes, basically vary these density classes by region. And so now they can say, in this location, make this super aggressive, make this less aggressive, right? And so the density manager part of this is really about just items in the game world that are dynamic, that we want to make sure we keep at a manageable level, right? And so if you start putting water bottles in one place, at some point, it'll start cleaning up because they're in the same volume, and the density class of the water bottle will inform how many we want to keep and how we want to do that. There's also lifetime cleanup. So things we want those to live, but we want them to disappear after a certain amount of time. So we've added that functionality in, so that's a lot better. And then vehicles come into play. So abandoned vehicles, we've been tuning this since the beginning of the year behind the scenes. This in the physics cleanup. So the abandoned vehicles is basically when you leave a vehicle completely abandoned. So no passengers, nobody's left on it. It's left on a planet. You leave it there. Already, it's put on a timer, right? And so at some point, we'll have to clean this up, right? If it gets interacted with, if passengers come into play on it, whatever, that revives it, resets the timer, right? I think if I remember right, that's set to something like 2 hours right now, something like this for abandoned vehicles, regardless of class for now. So that is something we want to add, which is basically change the density class for larger ships so that maybe they go faster. This is the kind of thing we need to keep tuning. And then so the abandoned vehicles will actually clean up those areas, right? Now, with the new system we have now coming in, we'll be able to override these values per region. And so for planet-side locations where we know there's going to be traffic, we can make that a lot more aggressive. And the last part of the cleanup system is the pink slip. I call it the pink slip, which is, hey, my ship turned pink and bam, it's gone, right? Which is basically when areas of the game where your ship is entering into a deep intersection with something else, right? And this is true of all areas, right? So if something enters deep intersection for a number of frames based on the size of the entities, size of the area, we will clean it up, right? We're going to first turn it pink, full pink, for a certain amount of time, and then poof, it disappears. The reason for that is because the servers are still very much physics bound. And there is no currently, I'm not saying it's impossible, but currently, there's no elegant way to kind of break those collisions automatically and cleanly. It typically creates these maelstrom of physics problems when you try to fix it, and now you've backed it out into another physics element that is now colliding, and so you end up into these massive unstable systems. And so the pink slip is there for the moment, right? We're trying to improve this. We've been tuning these values quite a bit since the beginning of the year. Every patch.
I would love to see the pink slip work on hangar doors. This just happened to me a couple nights ago. I was flying in. I think these hangar doors are closing way too fast and way too soon. It used to be that I could call a hangar door as I was approaching a station, and I had plenty of time to get in there and land, but it seems like almost every single time now, I'll call it as I'm approaching the station, and then as I'm about ready to pull into the hangar, the doors stop closing. Well, the other day, I was partway in before it started closing, and it just closed so fast that I ended up with half my ship in and half out, and the hangar door was closed right through the middle of my ship, and I was stuck. I tried recalling to get the hangar doors open again, and the system would not respond no matter what. I could have used the pink slip then to get my ship to despawn properly. Anyway, when the entity cleanup stuff, like, it sounds like, they're doing a lot of work here to keep environments clean. I've always been excited about the promise of PES and entity streaming and persistence. I think this is one of the things that really sets Star Citizen apart from other MMOs and other games, especially MMOs, because it's a lot easier to implement long-term persistence in a single-player game than it is in MMOs. So this is one thing that really sets it apart, and I hope that the dream of this is realized, and that some of the values that we're hearing, like 2 hours, is a short-term thing, as the game approaches a higher level of stability, because I hope that in the future, if I land in a forest of a planet, that I have that opportunity as I'm kind of driving or walking along this forest to see the wreckage of a player's ship, from last week or last month, that nobody has come along and found yet. And maybe I find some cool cargo that was on that ship, or I break out my hand salvage and I do some salvage and repair my bike that might be, those are the kinds of like emergent things that really excite me about entity persistence in Star Citizen. Now, it totally makes sense to me that in populated zones around landing pads, that kind of stuff, that you would dial up the aggressiveness of entity cleanup. But I'm hoping that eventually we see things hanging around a lot longer whenever they're kind of isolated, out in the wilderness, whatever. I think the density per object type makes a lot of sense, and it seems like a good approach for this, so perhaps they can use something like that for ships in the future. I'm excited about the possibility of derelict player craft out in the asteroid belts and that kind of stuff, so it'll be cool to see where they go with this. I hope what we're hearing about right now is not the finish line, and I don't think it is.
patch, we adjust the density classes, the abandoned vehicle timers, and the physics intersection costs a lot. I feel like we're seeing a lot less reports now. It's kind of getting a lot better. I think we're getting into the sweet spot, but it's unfortunately not a magic. Just turn on density tracking, right? We already have density tracking. It's really about tuning the numbers so that it feels good, right? And that's the hardest part of this.
Folks in chat are talking about just make it salvage gameplay. I want to preface that Benoit's not a game designer. And those are game design decisions, but yeah, I mean, an obvious kind of thing would be have an abandoned ship generate a salvage beacon, free ship
Sure.
to come and
Exactly.
and clean up and stuff. But I think a big part of that is salvage needs a bit more attention too. We need to make those materials worth more, because it's not just enough to generate the missions. We need to make the materials that you get from those missions more valuable and mean more. And there are things coming around the corner. That's not true. There are things coming down the line. Let's just be down the line. Around the corner, that's not accurate. That's not remotely true. Then things come down the line, like crafting and whatnot. They're going to need lots of materials from lots of different places and stuff like that. So mining, salvage, lots of opportunities there to link it with other gameplay systems and make people want to go out and salvage things.
I mean, the amount of abandoned ship, for example, like let's say we did that right tomorrow morning. We're like, okay, abandoned ship detected, salvage beacon goes up. There would be an overwhelmingly amount of salvage beacons, because the amount of abandoned vehicles is extremely high, right? And so
that seems to be a byproduct of the state of the game that we're in now. We are in an alpha game. There's really no consequence to claiming our ships. There's really very little we can do to go recover ships. And even if there was, again, there's very little incentive to do so. It's just so much more convenient to smash that claim button. As things like Vulcan come online and full ship death becomes less common, and there's more penalties for ship claiming, or ship claim times go up, and the insurance systems come online, and all of that, as we push the needle towards making it more lucrative and further incentivizing ship retention, ship reclamation, doing everything in our power to get that ship back to a point where we can repair it and restore it. I think maybe this will change. Maybe not. Maybe partially. But it'll be interesting to see.
Balancing those contracts after that becomes kind of impossible in this current setup. That's not to say we're not going to do that, right? But we need to put attention on salvage to be able to do that properly.
Oh, there we go.
No, Jared's voice,
Jared's
mic isn't going out. I was just forgetting where I needed to put my mouth in order to use it. I'm a professional. Something. All right, so entity cleanup and freight elevators.
Yeah.
Another big bugaboo. This one's a relatively recent is not. It's been exasperated recently. We'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Too many people. Too many NPCs. Spawn management. Whatever the heck you want to call it.
Personal pet peeve.
People go to an ASD or whatnot, and it's like they're trying to whittle the numbers down, and they get down to like 10, 12, or 12,
I've
10,
been there.
6, and then it bump back up and stuff because things are respawning too quickly. What's going on? What can you tell us?
This is one of the ones that completely infuriates me, because it touches on many things. So spawning in the game is all over, right? There's multiple different types of spawners. Some of them are like item port spawners. For example, I hate using the bartender as an example, but apologies. But the bartender picks up a glass from an item port that's on the counter, and then we're at some point going to respawn a glass on this so we can do the animation again, or things like that, right? Same thing for like AA turrets. In 4.0, we've had many issues related to overspawning from those spawners, and we fixed a lot of them. Mainly conditions where designers would set those up as infinite spawn and no limits, which is great, right? So that's one thing. Now, since we've been putting out content this year, like the different locations all have like a population of AI NPCs, right, in the place. And so it's been kind of, we've had overspawn, I think, with every content patch this year.
Yeah.
You know, where every patch there's at least one report that comes up, is like infinite NPCs at the location. Is it meant to be this hard, right? And I was like, all right, what's the cause now? This is one of an example of like the symptom is the same. The cause has been different every time. This is something I really want to get time to solve properly. But the replacement system is in the works, but it's not close to being there. But so the way this works, like I'll give you the most recent one, for example. I think it was in 4.3.0. The mission module is the system that actually activates the NPC population for a mission in a given area, right? So when you enter the action area of a specific part of the mission, then the mission code is going to go and initialize submodules, and then one of those submodules will say, "Hey, put some AI in there," and then it's going to activate the spawn closets in the area, and that's going to start, right? The issue is there was a bug with the way the mission flow was working for these things that would cause these modules to doubly initialize in certain cases. And when that started, then it would actually do it again and again and again. And so that's the latest source of these overspawns. The proper fix for this is the population manager. This is something that our R&D team have been working on, which is a replacement to all to both spawn closets are still going to be around, but the systems that drives the spawn closets to make these AIs appear and spawn on top of like the what's the word that they use for this? The base population in an area, like let's say you walk around New Babbage, all the social NPCs. Currently, all these social NPCs are placed there, right? And some of them, like again, the bartenders, are driven by mission modules or area modules, and those always get this overspawn. So we just need this replacement system at this point. Like this, we keep repeating this error from different angles, right? And so the population management system is, his approach is different. He's gonna know what's in the game world. It's like, I need 5 guys. Do I have 5 guys? We're good, right? Like instead of going, when I start, I spawn 5 guys, which is a complete, problem. And so yeah, overspawning will be solved by this. In the meantime,
Seems reasonable.
We're putting in more
Seems like a
verifications
system I
for
would like to work
the
on.
cases where when you stream out and you stream in and the module resets, or you abandon a mission or start the mission during while you're already at the action area, that the actual logic doesn't run twice, and that there's actual limits in those areas.
Sorry, I've just been thinking about
some of the logic there. By the way, some of the logic there seems to overlap in theory, at least, with some of the entity cleanup that they were just talking about with the density per object and wanting to ensure that you only have up to a certain number of an object in an area. Some of that logic sounds very close to maintaining a population of NPCs in an area, for example. And this goes back to my earlier points about learnings, for example, on solving the vast number of freight elevator bugs being applicable to solving other issues in other systems down the line. There's a lot of overtime patterns that emerge and repeat.
Said it. Distracted.
I just need those 5 guys.
All right. So obviously, that's a bit of a whack-a-mole thing until we get the new system online.
Yeah, one thing that I'm hopeful about though for this is that the teams have actually built some good additional debugging tools that allows us to kind of view the state of this. It sounds a bit weird, but it was difficult to even know how many NPCs are there at this location. That was actually a difficult information to find. So now we've got super good tools to be able to tell that. So that means if I'm able to just open the tool and view that information, it means that game designers can do the same. And so that means they can debug those problems in advance without us having to do it post-launch, which is the big thing.
No, chat. I don't have 5 guys money. All right. Freight elevators, entity cleanup, spawn management. server meshing came online with 4.0. It brought with it all this new stuff and all these great things that we could do now. We got to be able to increase the server cap to 600. We got to improve that FPS performance on the server from 4.5 to 20 and stuff like this. It also had some knock-ons to some old systems, specifically interdiction and beacons. So we resolved most of the interdiction stuff in July, I feel like. But talk to me real quick about why that happened and what the solution was.
Little story behind this. So the if we go back to the 3.x days, right? Like the game server has everything, right? He's simulating.
This is going to come down to state
All the entities
transfer,
are
I
on one
guarantee.
server. And so
Well,
there's
maybe not guaranteed, but I'm
I don't wanna say
98% sure.
shortcuts, because this was just the way you would build things at the time. Where, for example, doing interdiction was really like the server has all the entities, so he's able to do like cross zones check. He's able to raycast across zones. He's able to do all that stuff, right? Now with server meshing, you could be on a quantum path that brings you across game servers, right? And if you've ever looked at some of our backers have done outstanding tools to calculate interdiction positions and stuff like that. If you look at that, you'll see that the edges and the ends of this is where it actually matters, that you get positioned. And so that means that since we currently use the territory map around planets and moons, right, then typically that will interrupt the quantum jump of the interdiction that is the most effective or close to the most effective. And so what that needed is a solution that allows us to have a view of the interdiction system that's basically cross-server, right, for the game shark. And so the replication layer has that information, right? We do have it in the hybrid, but we are very reluctant at allowing what I'll call game code here with no, I'm not trying to be pejorative here. We don't want to let game code query the replication layer for multiple reasons, but we want to keep them isolated. And so for this, we needed to build a solution. So the team have actually built the online team built a new service that serves every shard, but is able to provide our game devs with basically a way to build a small representation, a small data representation of the game world for things that matter. So if you can picture this, you're in your ship, you start your quantum drive. What actually happens is now the game server is going to register in this new service called the Entity Cluster Service some piece of data that says we have a quantum drive at this location, right? And he's going to keep that updated, right? And on the other hand, I've got someone who starts a QED device, quantum interdiction device, QID device, QED, whatever, the interdiction device, starts your interdiction device that will also connect to this and then inform this kind of matrix view of the quantum interdiction network. That's doesn't matter which server you're on. This is all kept updated in semi-real time as you're quantuming and moving, and as the interdiction devices are activated or deactivated. And so what that allows the game server to do now is he's receiving these updates. He's got this, let's call it symbolic view of the game world to do it. And so now he's able to do proper raycasting math to see if the interdiction is going to hit across server. Doesn't matter if you're, on the same server or not, you can actually trigger the interdiction across. And then that basically gives us this ability to have cross-server coordination for things without having to push all this to the replication layer or query it from it. So this is mostly a gameplay system, but we can use it. We are using it for beacons. So we're going to be using it even more for the full beacon implementation, but it's going to be the same kind of thing where now you could be in New Babbage and someone has a beacon open in Pyro, and if the gameplay wants to allow it, you might be able to get that beacon or see that beacon or bind to it,
right? And beacons.
Makes sense. So this is state transfer. It sounds like the game servers... Well, actually, this makes sense because it's the replication layer deciding what information is relevant to a particular game server based on the area that game server is governing. And so whenever you have these quantum interdiction markers, I I can see the complexity in getting that to the relevant game server. So spinning up a new service that basically is only subscribing to all quantum originations and interruption markers, it seems like a viable approach to me. Interesting. And I can also see the relationship with beacons. So it sounds like this service will have broad potential reuse on basically any beacon or marker. Yeah. See if he continues talking about this. I'm still percolating in my mind, but it makes sense.
This is right now. Right now we've got the Apollo, which is going to PTU like right now. If it isn't already, it's.
Is it? I haven't checked out.
Yeah, exactly. We've been doing this for a while. I'm not looking at the chats, but whenever tonight's PTU goes, the Apollo will be in for PTU folks who already own it, and that's why you saw the injections of the modules that were given to everybody at no charge who owned the Apollo. So you'll be able to test that this weekend before we attempt to go to live later. Where was I going with this? But beacons. Medical beacons, but beacons, and specifically medical beacons here have had lots of compounded trouble since server meshing came on. First it was the notification. They used to get this. There used to be this big toast notification in the center, and I'm going to remember this wrong if somebody in chat's going to be like, that's not how it happened, Disco. I'm like, I'm trying. There's a big toast notification that used to happen in the middle, and then when we bumped the server notification, which was great for people who wanted to play first responders, because they could go and they could do stuff, and then they had this nice big notification that somebody needed a medical beacon, and they could stop what they were doing and then go and run off to the rescue, and that was great. When we bumped the player caps up to 600, that became absolutely interminable. Boom, 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 and we just had to shut that down. It was like, okay, we can't have that, and so they lost that functionality to save everybody else, and that sucked. But then there was the issue with the second solar system. The beacon, if the beacon originated in Pyro and you were in Stanton or vice versa, you didn't get the waypoint. You didn't get the marker because the marker existed in another star system that wasn't loaded in to where you were. So it just looked like, hey, I'm trying to pick up this rescue beacon, and it looked like nothing was happening because it couldn't give you the marker. There was no intermediate marker. And then there's some problem that started last month that meant we had to disable the entire thing while they worked to fix that. This system's had a lot of problems, and while not all of them are going to be fixed in time for this stuff, talk to me about the scope of the issue and what we need to do to make it better.
Well, so out of all of this, all the stuff you mentioned now, I know that our intent is to reactivate medical beacons, absolutely, right? I think that's a core part of the game we're trying to do, and so we really want those reactivated. The entity cluster service I just told you about is what can enable us to do cross-star system beacons. I don't think we're there yet, but we definitely want to get there, right, where we could actually pick those up. So right now, all of the kind of technology pieces that you need to fix all the issues you mentioned about beacons are there. Right, we have the ability to have controlled notifications, localized detection of beacons, cross-server, cross-star system notifications, whatever. It's really about, can we put a team on it to basically add all these things? But at least all of the hurdles are kind of solved with the interdiction work we did, and this new service, the cluster service, is the thing that we need to be able to do that, to reactivate all that. So that's already live. So it's a good thing.
And the bug that prevents people from being able to quantum to the beacon?
Well, that definitely needs to be fixed. I think that even for this release, we're aiming for that to be solved, because the beacons have to work, even if you don't get cross-star system beacons just yet, and that it's not fully integrated with the cluster service. I think localized beacons should still be functional. You should be able to quantum to them, and you should receive them properly. And yeah.
I got a soft spot for first responder gameplay. Like everything else you do in the verse is in some way, shape, or form self-serving, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going out and making your fortune, being a pirate or being a miner or a salvager or a racer. Although if you could make your fortune on being a racer, good for you. I don't know how much the Daymar Rally pays out, but it's like first responders, the people who choose to play as medics and stuff. They're choosing a loop that's just there to help other people, and I think that's cool. And I don't think we've done a super great job in the past of really supporting that as much as we should. So that's not I don't have the power to do anything about that. I just wanted to say that I recognize that, and we can do better.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't really considered that before. The fact that the medical game loop is one of the few that are not self-serve. Although, surely there will be more in the future. I can think of a lot of game loops that will potentially be built on the backs of emergent play that is not self-serve, but requires a constellation of people within the community to support. So, could be the first of many. Yeah. Anyway, continuing on.
Let's go to a big one. Let's go to a big one. Where I'm trying to do start with big ones. Freight elevators, blah blah, and energy cleanups, and little guys like interdiction,
Yeah.
beacon. Transit system.
I don't hear you. Just something on the line.
Here we go.
Shitty transit system. I'm in the third hour. I'm in the third hour. That's my one for the hour. What are we doing?
Transit. So, well, we do have a hero squad on this, right? And so
another hero squad.
For everybody's sake, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the transit system is the system that drives elevators, not freight elevators, trains, and some areas base transit for these things. So the transit system has been the bane of our existence. I can't frame it to something other. And so at the beginning of the year, we put some significant resources in that hero squad and brought in some very, very experienced developers to the team to help push these fixes along. On top of what I discussed earlier about the methodology that changed for these issues, and the introduction of self-healing techniques, right, to try to get it moving. And so we are accepting the current state of transit, right? I feel that right now we no longer lose carriages, or when we do, it gets auto-fixed, right? The destinations mostly work. Double doors rarely happen. The system mostly responds well. There's still issues with I'm still seeing in my playthroughs the train timers of insane values, which is a bit of a drag. Or the transit still has this unfortunate propension of, in the event of a server crash, and you are in movement on the train, your client will keep interpolating that.
Yeah, we still
which might get you to space, right?
Yeah, we still get the occasional missing elevator and whatnot. There's still a few trains that trap people.
Yes, that can still happen, right? But right now, the state at which this system is, the approach of that system is, we're kind of accepting its state, right? We're still tracking the big egregious issues that we have, like the ones that we just mentioned. So those are still being tracked and worked on. But overall, from a leadership standpoint, we're kind of in a space where now we want to talk about transport. Right.
Yes, I've been waiting. Like, you've been sitting here like, oh, we're going to accept it. We're going to accept it. I'm like, give them the drop, Benoit. Don't just be like, well, yeah, we're going to accept it. We're just fine. And we think it's fine. We think it's going to be this. We don't think it's fine. It's just we got self-healing in, and it can carry us until the new thing comes in, and that's transport system.
Correct. Go. So transport is a complete rewrite of transit, right? Which has a much different approach to how it manages peripherals, things you click on to call up things, gateways, which are the areas at which the carriages stop, and carriages, of course. And so the transport system is a lot more resilient in its approach to streaming problems, which has been a thing in the past, right, for the transit. It's also the way it's developed is a lot more robust. And so the state of transport, let's talk about that. So the team currently have, the approach that we've taken for it is the system is kind of built at this point, and we have a single transport link that we use internally. So not yet on a player-facing build, but we have an internal build of this where New Babbage hubs are completely driven by the transport system, which is pretty big a milestone for the team, because it means like the system is basically kind of fully featured in terms of it's able to drive one of the major hubs drop. We are currently working at
That's good.
instancing those transit links. So just to reiterate what I said a little bit back in January, the introduction of instance hangars, which means dynamic gateways in the transit system, is really what like made it a big issue, right? And so now the team are working at adding that functionality into transport to make sure that we support properly dynamic gateways, which will allow you to have a transport link to and out of an instance. Now, this could be an instance hangar, but in the future it might be an area, location that has some stuff in it, right? And so that's the state of transport right now, is we're working on the instance transit link and trains. So we've done elevators, and now we're putting the trains in with the full feature, which the trains have an additional peripheral, which is the timer, the added timer on top of it.
This is one of those things where we talked about it. In the finished product, it shouldn't look any different than what they've got. It should just work. There should just be a time where it's like, oh, look, all these things work and they've stopped killing you. Underneath, it's an entirely new system that was built after the implementation of server meshing, which is really the big thing. It's the old system was built long before server meshing. I know we reached out to the original developer who built it. Like he's not with the project. We're like, hey, you want to help us? You want to help us reconfigure it for the server meshing world? And there's like, no, you just need to build a new thing and whatnot. So you put together your team. We're building the new system. I don't understand why it's not called Star Transport though.
Good point. And just as an aside, this is very common. I can't recount the number of times I gutted some service and completely changed the plumbing and how it works under the hood, and the customer saw the exact same thing they had always seen. They couldn't really tell the difference, but we could tell the difference.
I don't understand why it's not called Star Transport, but we're building the new
Starport.
Why aren't we calling it the Starport system?
Hey, we could.
We're going to call it the Starport system. We're going to call it the Starport system now. Here's what's going to happen. Anytime you try to talk about it publicly, I'm just going to call it the Starport system now. And it really doesn't matter what you call it internally.
Why do we do these shows?
But yeah, that's like I said. You've already got the first version. It's already working internally in New Babbage. We're adapting it for instancing, and there's some high hopes that we'll be able to get that in at some point in 2026.
So we are absolutely tech previewing that system in place, where our goal is going to be to basically, we want to try to do one full location with it.
Yep.
So that all that entire location, elevators, trains, all that stuff is completely Starport driven.
Yep.
And then tech preview that and make sure that, the same methodology and QA checks that we've added for transit are going to have to fully pass before we actually accept to bring it in.
So tech preview for Vulcan and all these graphics things and the mission system, tech preview for engineering, and then tech preview for just use the elevator, please.
Yeah.
Just use the elevator, please.
Pretty much. Exactly.
Okay. You said
that'll be fun. Just riding the elevators up and down all day like we were kids again.
I challenge you, sir, with the ATC.
Oh, man. Well, that's one of the casualties of this, right? I hate ATC. Like its functionality is really cool, but it's one of those systems, a bit like transit.
Wait, it has functionality?
Well, yeah, it does. So on ATC, we haven't done a lot of work on it, mostly focused on metrics. And so ATC, right, is a system that you call when you want landing or when you want to leave, right? It is unfortunately responsible for hangar queues, and is also responsible to assign you a landing area and coordinate the your instancing hangar. So basically, create the instance manager for your hangar that creates the hands, and then manage the pad on your hangar. And so for ATC, while we're completely not happy with its stability overall or the queue times, which is the one thing that we're actually looking at the moment, is to make sure that the system works the way we want it. That's why we've put all these metrics in about at this location, the time to exit is this, at this location is this. Do we have enough gateway? Does the system perform the way it should? So we're still in an info gathering phase here to have the proper plan. But we do know one thing is that we are going to change the way the interaction between ATC and hangars actually work. Currently, ATC manages everything. Like I said, it gives you your landing area. It says, hey, I need an instance at this gateway. Path spawns your hangar, instance created, all that stuff. Adds that instance tag to your player, then the doors open. Now you can get into your hangar, but now ATC sees the pad in your hangar as his landing area. He's managing this, right? And so he's taking care of all that stuff, which is a bit problematic because it's an old system. We know of its flaws, and so we do want to split these responsibilities so that there's a hangar manager.
Yeah.
So that the moment that you're done going through those doors, that's it, done. ATC's out of the picture. Now you're completely in your hangar,
which can
the
be a
hangar manager
struggle
takes care of this.
in and of
And
itself,
so that we've been doing tech
at
design
least for
on this,
Grolo.
but unfortunately, because of the different focuses we have this year, this is one casualty that I was not able to push forward on.
Yeah, there's some of these stations that have like 10, 15, 20 doors, but you'd swear the ATC only ever uses one or two of them.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we want to
Seen that.
solve, even with the old system, before we even start anger management.
Now, when you do the new system, ATC, air traffic controller, Star traffic controller, you call it Star TC. Star
Yes.
TC to go with Starport. Somebody suggested
Plus one.
Or maybe Starport does
Plus
ATC
1,000.
Star traffic controller. Yeah, there you go. You're with me. The Star Troller.
Star Troll.
All right.
Yes, please.
How you feeling, Benoit?
I'm good. I'm good.
All right. So we've gone through our year of playability. We've gone through our little.
As an aside, thank God Jared has his beard
We've
back.
gone through.
Looked weird without
our what's the
Freight elevators.
No, not before freight elevators. We did server meshing.
Yep.
Why isn't it called Starmeshing? We went through Starmeshing. We've gone through our list of big ticket items. It's like this. We've been doing this for about 2:15 now. I want to go from big ticket items to
Bigger ticket items.
the biggest. I want to go to this is if I'm allowed. Hold on. If I'm allowed to I'm gonna put my CIG hat on.
Go for it.
There you go. And take my CIG hat off. If I'm allowed to have an opinion that's just mine and mine alone.
Always.
The most egregious thing from my perspective, the thing that is, after dealing with getting the server frame rates up and getting the stability scores up and killing 30K, which is amazing, and I'm going to shout you that thing. I'm going to shout you out till the cows come home on that one. That thing plagued us for so long. Work on transit to transport. Work on the freight elevators is still ongoing. All that stuff, great. To me, the most demoralizing, the most heartbreaking, the most aggravating thing is when your stuff disappears. It just
Eager to hear about stuff disappearing, but I just had a thought when he said about star meshing. I have a thumbnail for the part 2 of my reactions to this 3-hour marathon technical chat, and part 2 of this was all about server meshing. I'm changing that thumbnail to star meshing. Just FYI. you'll have already watched that probably by the time you see this. So this is retro.
It's just that simple. You spend hours in there. You work your butt off. There are people who get together with members of their org to work towards earning a Polaris from Wicklow. And if they manage to put all their stuff on the elevator and the elevator doesn't eat it, they then get their Polaris. They then get their Atlas ICTY. They then get their
I have to admit, I haven't really suffered what he's talking about because I have just avoided Wicklow entirely. It's not a mechanic or system that interests me, so I've just kind of avoided it. So, in some ways, I've probably made out.
F8, C, whatnot, and they have it. And then we release a patch, which we used to do every 3 or 4 months, and now we've been doing every month. So as an unfortunate side effect of our change in our philosophy, we exasperated this problem, and now it's a gamble. It's a crapshoot. Every time we release a patch, it's just who gets to keep it, who gets to lose it. Bing, 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 bing. What the heck is happening? What is happening, and what the hell are we doing about it?
All right, cool. LTP, right, is the famous system
the
we're
worst
talking about.
named thing in the world. No, sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Well,
lettuce,
let's go
tomato,
a bit
pickle?
into what LTP actually does, right? Because there's some misconception around it, and also a bit of misconception to the amount of
Long-term
effort actually put on it.
persistence.
But so historically, if we go back to the 3.x era, I guess, I think it's in the 3.x era.
Yeah.
We developed the first LTP system, right? Which came a bit as a side request, right? Which was we patched 4 times a year. It was a bit like, oh, there's some stuff players want to be able to persist, cross patch. We're still in development, so it's okay. We're wiping all the time, and we want to wipe because blah blah blah. There's other considerations. So let's build something. So we built a very small system initially to persist stuff, and the way that worked is that the game server would basically submit these commands to say this guy picked up a gun, this guy dropped a gun, this guy has this, and so that was a solution that kind of worked at the scale of a single server kind of system, and we had a lot less items at the time. That solution was in no way scalable, right? But it kind of did work better overall than the current one, to be honest. Now come PES 3.18, come 4.0 dynamic server meshing. Now we persist everything else, right? So we need to kind of change how we deal with long-term persistence. And so let me describe a bit how this works currently. So when you acquire a ship from, let's say, the web platform, right? That ownership record lives on the web platform. It's in there, right? And every time you log into the game, we check, oh, this guy has this thing. Does he have that ship in the game? In his entitlements, right?
It's called an entitlement. That's an important term.
That's your entitlements, right?
That's your entitlement.
So the entitlement records, I know people are going to make the joke about, oh yeah, we're all entitled. Yeah. So the entitlement
I wasn't going to make that joke. I respect these people.
I'm
common term.
So we make sure you have an entitlement record. When you actually open up your ASOP terminal, right, and you view your list of ships, what you're actually viewing is your list of entitlements, right? These are not your ships. These are actually your entitlement records. Attached to your entitlement records is the insurance document that goes with it, which describe the loadout of the ship. We call this an entity class loadout, which describes what's in each port, right? And if there's no entity class loadout or insurance document with it, then it's the default loadout. So that is your entitlement records. That's what you see in ASOP. Then we also query for, is there an entity for this entitlement record at the moment, right? And that will look at the game database in this current moment. Let's call it the inventory database for now, right? So we cross-link the two. So you'll for each row in your ASOP terminal, you'll see your entitlement record. You'll see the state of the entitlement record will allow you to see if you need to deliver it first. That means I have no entity in the game. So when you deliver it, now we create the entity in the game. And then if it's stowed in an inventory, then you can retrieve it, right? It starts from the entitlement record. And then if the ship is stowed, then you'll see its location is set. right? If it's left in space at a location, you'll see its location is set. If it's lost or destroyed, or I think there's a couple of different states, but one of them is destroyed, then you can claim the ship, right? And then that will use the insurance document to destroy whatever matches this entitlement. So we have a way to find entities that were created from a given entitlement, gets destroyed, and then we use the insurance document to give you a brand new ship,
I don't know
right,
if that's
at
working.
the location where you're at. And so
I've been able to claim the same thing multiple times and just basically make copies of it. I don't know that I've tried that recently, but as soon as like a month and a half or 2 ago. I don't know if that still works, but
that's in-game. That's what you have in-game. That's the way the in-game part works, right? So let's do a clear example. I'm in New Babbage. I have a hawk in my list, and I deliver it. It gets created at that location. I retrieve it. It gets unstowed onto the pad. I use it around, blah, blah, blah. I fly out to another place. I lose the ship. I respawn in Fletcher. I could do my time. Then I go out to Grimex or whatever I respawn at. And now I'm at a different location. I see the hawk in my entitlement list, but the ship is nowhere to be found. I claim it. A new ship is created. It's put in there.
Yep.
Okay.
So before we go to the ones you get in game, which is just to reiterate this so everybody understands this before we move on to the next thing. Because people are always wondering, why do I always get the stuff I pay money for? Real money for, but the stuff that I earn in games is different. That's what we're in the process of explaining right now.
Yes.
Because the stuff that you get, that you pay actual money for, or that you get awarded through like a subscription or a gift, like we gave the armor to a concierge a couple months ago and stuff like this. Those sit on the web platform. That every time you log into the game goes, hey, what am I entitled to? The platform says, these are the things you're entitled to, and it gives you back. It's why, remember the character reset back in the day and whatnot? That's all it did. It just refreshed those entitlements, and that's why you got those things back. That system is not simple. Benoit what Benoit described there was not simple in the least, but it's a pretty hefty system. It works. We know it works. It's why you are never in any risk of losing the things that you pledged for, and it's why sometimes certain items like the Race for Stanton stuff, trigger a thing that gives you a web platform entitlement, and those go into your My Hangar, and you see them in your My Hangar, and that's why you get those, and you have that. That stuff is, for the most part, it's very stable. It's very stable. You can always rely on getting that stuff back. That's not how the in-game stuff works.
Correct.
Benoit.
So we went through the web platform stuff and how ASOP works, right? Let's go into, now I go to New Deal and I buy a ship with UEC, right? That will actually give you an entitlement, right? Because you can claim those ships, right? You can transfer those ships. So now, at that point, up to now, these will work identically, right? But when you log into the game, we don't reconcile from an outside source your list of purchased in-game ships. They are just entitlements in your account, right? And that's it. We keep them. Okay. Let's stay on ships for now, right? Before we get the items.
Let's stick with ships.
Now, the thing that's important to know here is that the actual ship you're playing with, the amount of possible states for that ship are almost infinite, right? You could leave the ship in space. You could leave it in your friend's hangar. For some reason, people are able to do that. You can stow it in inventory. It can be inside an Idris that's stowed in someone else's thing. All kinds of stuff can happen. And so there's multiple paths to update that specific state of that ship. Whereas your entitlement, once you have it, you have it. That's why your ASOP terminal always has it. Now, let's talk about how LTP works now. Now, this is within a game patch. When we release a new patch, inventory database, entitlement database, they're gone, right? We start from scratch. And now we're rebuilt. So you reconnect, you come in, your web purchases are being reconciled. We create new entitlements for them. And then when you get in game, you create new ships, and then you play with those ships and everything works. What is LTP? LTP is when you acquire things in game and you have ships that you own, right? The way LTP was designed, and maybe this is the part that, there's a mistake there, right? But still, I'll explain how it works. When you stow something in an inventory that you own. The systems will create what we call LTP records. These LTP records basically say they're close to what an entitlement is, right? But they say Jared owns a hawk, right? And those are stored in another database, right? That is outside the game environment and lives cross patches, right? And so now when we wipe the entitlement database and we wipe the game database and we start fresh from a new patch, when we reconcile your account the first time, we're going to give you your web purchaser for sure, and we're going to give you back your LTP records. And so that will create those entitlements. That's the intent. Now, the problem is, right, we need to make sure that we always stow the stuff back into inventories that we own properly and that those records actually save properly, right? And it turns out that there's a million goddamn ways in which stuff gets stowed in this game. And so, for example, claiming a ship by insurance, then you get the ship, it gets stowed from another path. And in that path, the LTP wasn't correct. We've had cases where we tried to fix bugs related to the F7C turrets, for example, that got disconnected, that were a default loadout item that we didn't want to wipe when you claimed insurance on it. And that messed up the LTP records for it. And so this whole thing basically is very fragile. And so what we realize now is that the list of LTP records and the way we update them is not always a slam dunk. In fact, there are a bunch of cases where the record's not updated right. But we even had a case in 4.2.0 very recently where we realized 2 days after launching the patch that the way the recording was going for the ships, there was an issue where instead of giving you, I'm going to take your Wicklow Polaris as my example, just to make it super egregious. Your Wicklow Polaris that you stowed in your inventory by going at your hangar and storing it back in would actually persist as one of its components in LTP. So you would get like a cooler instead of the ship, like you'd get.
my God.
And so that was obviously a very big issue, and we ran corrective programs to solve that. And so that's why, if you notice in 4.2.1, you didn't have much reports of people losing ships in 4.2.1. But now we're back at 4.3.0, and we've had reports of lost ships between patches. And so we're pretty certain at this point that we know that there's still cases where the LTP records are incorrect, either through certain game flows. There's also, unfortunately, a lot of signal to noise ratio issues, like people claiming they've lost ships. We investigate their accounts; they never had those ships.
Yeah.
We get a lot of that, right? And so at this point, we have to be very prudent.
Yeah.
But
I want to jump in here to make sure that this doesn't get lost in some of the stuff I'm checking. So there's two issues. We need to step back and explain how the checkout and the stow works, because that's causing some confusion. We'll do that in a second. But this bug where first bug is things aren't getting stowed right. Things aren't getting stowed right, and so and so when it comes time to entitle at the beginning of a new patch cycle, you don't get the thing. Sometimes it's not getting stowed at all. Sometimes it's getting stowed and being logged as a component part or something else, and that's why it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have a ship. I don't have my ship, but I have this cooler instead. I don't think I own this cooler and whatnot. We were on a call, you and I, until it was like 4:00 in the morning. My time, when we were investigating this and just giving you examples, and we were trying to figure out what's going. The man was literally inside the raw LTP database. We were checking individual items, like talking to backers on Twitter and Discord, and like, okay, when did you do this and what did you do this? Like working down at the most granular level in the middle of the night, trying to figure this out back in, I can't even remember what patch it was.
That's some debugging.
To figure out that they were being stored as other items.
Yeah.
So that you can write the SKU to fix that stuff. But all of this happens because of something that we haven't explained before, and that's the checkout and stow system. So talk to me about, and talk to me, be candid, it's okay, about how the checkout and stow on this LTP system works. And I'm gonna preface you people. I'm gonna preface this with something. We've admitted to a lot of peculiarities in the course of this show. Now we're about 2.5 hours in. We've been very candid. We've been very forthright. We've admitted to Benoit said the words can't trust dev with this or whatnot. It's like this. A lot of things are being said in jest and whatnot. What I can't control what you take away from this conversation that we've had. My hope would be a recognition that we're human and that we're constantly trying and growing and striving to do better. If you choose to take other stuff from that, I can't do much to help that. But explain the checkout and stow system, because that's what's going to light the bulb for a whole lot of people of what the struggle is here.
+1 to being human, for what it's worth. So many times when I see extreme criticism on public forums or in Spectrum or wherever, there's this vibe or like sense that like these mistakes are just unfathomable. Like how could you make such a mistake? Like, why don't you have an army of testers? Where's the quality assurance? Like, you guys are idiots. Like, it's just, and I just, it just makes me want to ask those people, like, God, it must be great to be perfect, It must be great to walk around never making mistakes. I can't relate. I've made a ton of mistakes in my career. I have shipped some freaking broken ass shit. Like, I don't know. All I can say is it must be great to be those people. But the rest of us living here in the real world, like, we make mistakes. And we're going to keep making mistakes. And perfection's impossible, but even getting close to takes time. Takes a lot of iteration.
So you have the inventory system, right? Where that stuff goes and gets stored in there, and the records for these, let's say you have a ship that you store you're at your hangar, there's a ship on the pad. That ship is unstowed. It actually lives in the game shard database and is actively being simulated on, meaning we're getting updates from the game server on this ship, its position, its location, the state of doors, thrusters, all that stuff, right? It's, multiple messages per second, right, on these things. So it's unstowed. Now you press the store button on your ASUP, right? Platform goes down, doors close. Now the system will stow that ship. What that means is it deletes the ship from the shard, removes it from the game world, and then moves it to the inventory system. So it gets stored into your inventory.
It's called the global database, by the way.
Your location inventory, right?
If I understand it correctly.
There. At that point, if you own the inventory where the ship is getting stored, we create an LTP record for it. Meaning that if we wipe the patch right at this second, and you come back in the new patch, we will give you back that ship for sure, right? Now, through the hangar, 100%, right? But there's other areas where we create ships when they're already stored, right? There are areas where we do repair and we modify stuff like that. Those are the areas where now the LTP record might not get created, or we might interpret it as a separate thing. The other thing is when we stow things into an inventory that you own, it's not just a ship, right? This is the bit that sometimes people oversimplify.
It's the whole
tree of the ship.
Yeah.
Right. So if the ship has a box container that has 32 SCU of boxes that have handguns in them, I'm going to give you the ship plus the handguns. Anything in
where
that
your ship
tree
has a
that
NERSA
is
parked
flagged
on it.
for the long-term
The
processing.
NERSA has some rifles
this is
and
where
weapon racks in it.
Look at items in the game and they say, this we want to store
The
cross-patch.
body of my buddy
right?
on the bed.
There are things we do not want to store cross-patch. Ammo, consumables, stuff like this. We don't want to store this cross-patch, right? That's a design decision that we've taken in the past. And so there's this whitelist that comes into play that decides what items will create LTP records for and when those get processed. And so the process of taking something that you're storing and then creating LTP records from it is really about processing the whole tree. So when you store an edge,
I assume the design decision around not persisting things like ammo and beverages and that type of stuff is just load on the system, or avoiding the overhead that comes with creating all those additional LTP records, would be my assumption. And that's a fair trade-off.
We might be creating hundreds of LTP records for stuff that's in it, right? And so that gets to be an issue. Also, like if you have you can start thinking about the edge cases now, right? You have a constellation. I don't even know if it fits, actually. Let me take a smaller ship. You have a Gladius in the bay of an Idris, and you store the Idris in your inventory. Technically, you might get the LTP record for the Gladius in this case, right? Now, it depends on ownership and how that's actually trickling. And so these are all the cases we have to deal with this. And so when we told players in the past, oh, you need to store your stuff, right? What does that mean, right? I'll give you a concrete example of where there would be a loss.
When I this is a great example when I talk about complexity. You'll often see me in the comments whenever I'm discussing with you all, or in my videos whenever I'm outlining why things are the way they are, why things are hard, why things take so long, etc., etc. And I will often mention the words complexity or size of project as things that that cause some of these larger issues around length of time or bugs or issues or making it more difficult to ship seamless products. Simplicity is hard, and often systems will grow in complexity like this. It's obvious that this inventory and entitlement and LTP system that he's talking about is very, very complex. Anything that has as many states as he's talking about is a super complex piece of code to be working on. And so the more complex the code, the more difficult it is to get it right.
Ship, right? Based on these parameters. Let's say there's no defect on the system, which we're not completely sure yet. I'm pretty certain there is a defect, but let's start with there's no defect. You play the game with your Gladius and you leave it in space somewhere, and now you respawn at your station, and your ASOP says Gladius destroyed, right? Or whatever. And now you have the claim button, right? And you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I'll do that later. And you leave the game. And then we patch. You don't have that ship. Because when you unstowed the ship to the game shard to play with it, we removed the LTP record for it. Right? That's the way the system is designed. Now,
makes me think maybe they shouldn't remove the LTP record. Maybe the LTP record should itself have some kind of state. Well, similar to the web platform that they're talking about. Obviously, whenever you bring the web platform records into the game and create entitlements from them, you're not removing the record from the web platform, right? So I'm curious why this doesn't work more like that. And I'm sure there's background and history on why there always is. So.
We're going to change that because that's, there's too many paths in which stuff gets stowed that could lead to problems or that don't respect the rules properly. And that's what we've come to realize. And so without going into too much details about how we do this, right? But this is a bit part of our item imprint epic, right? So very large approach there, because we always said item recovery tier 0 is just tier 0. So there's more item input work there. But part of this is a revamp of how we deal with long-term persistence. And we're going to take a very, I'm going to say, simple approach to this. We're going to persist your entitlements across patches. And so instead of trying to always reconcile all the data from the game state, which I just gave a couple of examples, but I could go on, right, of examples where, the turducken example of like stuff in stuff and stuff and stuff, right? That, and all these things can...
If you can avoid dealing with the complexity of all those possible states, you're going to make a more resilient system for sure.
Cause either the records to go to the wrong place or the wrong things being persisted. So instead of that, we're going to persist your entitlements. So that means that if you see a ship in your ASOP terminal, you're going to come back to the next patch. You're guaranteed to have the same list. There's no ifs, and or buts, because we're keeping that database cross-patch completely. And now the other questions people I've seen some comments. People are like, why don't you just persist the whole thing across patches, right? We cannot do that for reasons related to the data format. So let's say between 4.2 and 4.3, the Gladius to play with is not the same Gladius between patches. It's completely changed. Its shape has changed. Its entity hierarchy has changed. The parameters on them have changed. The components that drive it have changed. And so we don't yet have the tools or the proper approach to version every single part of the game properly, so that we could forward migrate the data, right? So that the Gladius that you've stored in 4.2, it's all tree, its parameters, its snapshots, its variables, all that. So you come back in 4.3 and we're like, we migrated to the next one. That's something we want to do, but we're completely not there yet. And so
That's
we
fair.
need this LTP layer. So
That's very fair. That kind of sophistication on forward data migration is, I mean, that's kind of the holy grail. I've seen implementations that offer that, but like that's polish. We are not at the polishing phase.
Entitlement records actually serves that purpose right now, because when you claim a ship from insurance, we will basically do the same exact thing, which is we persist the fact that you own this ship, and we allow you to obtain a recent version of that ship on the current patch. It'll be exactly the same mechanic.
So let me attempt to do Chris Hands here and say it another way, so that between your way and my way, people will have
Sure.
an understanding. And you tell me if I ever mess up in this stuff. So you buy something on the website, it gets stored in a website version of this database where all these things are done. You log into the game. When you log into the game, it says, "Hey, I need my entitlements. What are the things that this person owns from this other thing?" It queries this other database that's on the platform, on the web, whatever, gets a list of things, pulls down, and that's why you have it. That system works. It's great. It's pretty robust. It's people don't have any trouble getting the stuff that they buy. That's why that's always there. That's great. Whew. All right. Everything else you buy in the game is super insanely plentiful, from giant spaceships made of all these components down to individual bullets and everything. And it's all physicalized and whatever. Maintaining all of that for every single player, every single version that gets left over and stuff is simply not possible. It's simply too big a thing. So we have to decide what to save and what not to save. LTP is a separate database, not the entitlement database over here, a separate database of the things that you have purchased, found, earned in game that gets locked to that. We make choices on what that is. Bullets, no. Med pens, no. A spaceship, yes. Armor, yes. So, and there are lots of areas in between, but we'll go with the extremes here. Med pens and spaceships. We'll use spaceships. We'll keep with spaceships as the example because it's the easiest way to explain this. So you've bought the spaceship, you've earned the spaceship, whatever. You land it in a hangar, you stow it, boom, it creates an LTP record. Doesn't create that LTP record until you've got it home, you stowed it, and boom, you've got it. The next time you try to fly it, you pull it up from the hangar. That coming up from the hangar elevator is more than just a nice visual. It is a representation of what's happening to your LTP record. It is pulling that out of LTP and moving it into the live server game database, the universe of the world, so that you can fly it around. It needs to do this in order to work for things like piracy and theft and prevent item duplication. It has to come out of there to go here. So that's how we prevent duplication. This is all in a perfectly working scenario. There are plenty of bugs that creep in here. People are like, wait, I didn't stow this and I came back to two versions of the ship. Those are bugs. We're talking about how it was designed to work. You take it out, you're flying, it's no longer in LTP, you're flying around. It's out there until you bring it back to a hangar, stow it, make it go down, and whatnot. At which point it recreates the LTP record, puts it back in. If your ship is destroyed while you're out flying it, it doesn't create your new LTP record until you hit the claim button. You hit the claim button, and then it cleans that up, puts it into the LTP record. So that's not something we've ever been super great at communicating. to people, and why sometimes it's like, well, why have I lost the ship? What have not lost the ship? We're explaining these things to help you better fight that fire until these new changes come in. That system has lots of bugs, lots of flaws, lots of issues here and there. If you took anything from Benoit's
as complex systems
his
do,
attitude, his demeanor, we fully recognize the limitations of it. Like many things in Star Citizen, it was a product of its time, and it needs to be revised and helped and bolstered as the game continues to grow and get more complex. Those are things you can do to help assuage that. Obviously, everybody knows the thing about landing and getting it back to the hangar. Don't forget to claim your things in the ASOP. It's not going to fix everything. There's still all the outlying bugs and issues and stuff, but it's another thing that you can do to help yourself in the meantime. That said, we have a new solution that we're going to put into effect, and I'm not going to say anything when I throw it back to Benoit, he can say what he wants to say about when. When you earn a ship, when you buy a ship and whatnot, it ensures you've gone through the mission reward or the Wicklow thing or the buying. Not when you steal it from somebody else, but when you do one of the legitimate ways. We are going to create an entitlement record, not an LTP record, an entitlement record up in another database that's just like the one that we use for when you buy things. Yeah. And then from that point on, now that we've created that record over there in that database, not inside LTP, that means that no matter what happens, the next time you log in, you're going to have access to your ship. The next time we do a patch, you're going to have access to your ship with the same stability and the same reliability as the system we use to sell things. And so like that. So that is what they're working on right now. So we don't have to wait for the changes to LTP in order to resolve this terrible issue of people losing the ships that they've bought with in-game money or earned through Wicklow rewards and stuff like that. How'd I do, Benoit?
That was actually pretty good. I mean, a couple of things that correct, but not even worth it. I think that's totally fine.
All right. You want to tell anybody about when we might?
Well, we're actively working on this right now. So the big parts of the online team are dedicated to this. There's a few things that we need to solve in order to put this into full production, release it. Obviously, since those are backend systems, they have to be super robust and very well tested because you know what happens when they're not. But that's the approach. In the meantime, though, we're discussing mitigating options, right? So I'm not going to promise those here, but we did do a mitigation in 4.2.1 that actually kind of worked for ships, specifically ships, not all items, but for ships. And so we might actually use that again to ease up on some of the pressure before all the systems come in, because the reality is your entitlements is what you're actually driving at from the ASOP terminal. And so we can just ensure that you have all those entitlements again, right? And so that's the mitigation. And so we're probably going to be putting that into play just so that in the meantime, while we're developing the feature, there's not as much, ship loss and things like that.
Somebody in the chat was like, Jared, star-splaining again. Star-splaining again. Yeah, yeah. It's my grandfather used to serve on the USS Tingy, and his job, he served on it during World War II in Korea, and his job was to be the person that sat next to the captain, and when the captain gave the order to repeat the order in the radio and whatnot, so that you heard the same thing from two different voices in two different ways, so that you understood, so that it reduced the amount of misunderstanding and what happens inevitably, because I guess we've been doing this for a while. Drink, everybody. Is you let one person say it and you only have one person say it, and then half the people get it, and that's great, and half the people don't get it because it's not delivered quite the way. So we've found over the years, much to the annoyance to some people who call it star-splaining, that when you say it two different ways, it helps both halves of the people in the community understand. There's usually somebody that gets it from one way and somebody that gets it from the other way, and we like to do both because that's our job here. So you can call it star-splaining if you want, but
I think you did a pretty good job, to be honest.
I do that a lot. I'll explain something and I'll be like, now repeat it back to me, just to make sure that we're connecting.
What else we got left, Benoit? That was pretty much all of our big ticket things.
I think so.
I know, folks. Before we let you go, I mean, we got 10 minutes left before we hit 3 hours. Let's go ahead and try. Recently, there was some press and stuff like that. Turbulent, or some part of Turbulent, is becoming what is it called? Cloud Imperium Games Montreal stuff. How's that going?
Very good, actually. I mean, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the merger, right? Of Turbulent and CIG, and then I mean, it's
Dang, 2
going
years
really well.
already.
I think overall so we did want to do some adjustments though, because like the Turbulent teams, even though they were fully working on Star Citizen, were still under the Turbulent name, right? Which caused us a bunch of grief, to be honest, in like having to explain, like when we're hiring people and we're bringing into the team, it's like, so what is there? Oh, it's Star Citizen, but it's Turbulent, but really we're the same. Like, it's okay. Like that doesn't help, right? So we all wanted to make sure that this was kind of one good unified message, and so for the game teams over there, basically we kind of split the two businesses, because Turbulent still exists as a web company, right? And the web teams are fully inside CIG now, and so changing the name of the studio to Cloud Imperium Games Montreal made sense, right? To be able to leverage the outstanding talent in the city, and build stable teams over there, and the team has grown quite a bit. And so this was really about like clarifying stuff like this, and I think it's going well. I mean, the integration has been fantastic so far. I mean, the way the teams operate across the board at CIG are improving. I think that even though there's transatlantic time zones, you can see a lot of the fruit of the collaborations between the teams show up right in the stuff that we've produced this year. The teams travel back and forth, the key leads are exchanging, and there's a really good gel between this. And so no, it's been, to be honest, really positive so far. So it's good.
Well, that about does it for what I have for you, Benoit. Chat's been like, SCL stands for Star Citizen Long. Sometimes, at least when Benoit and I get together, and people are like, Star Citizen Long, or Star SCL longer than CitizenCon Direct. That's crazy. Yeah, it will be longer than CitizenCon Direct. Let's talk about that for a second.
Speaking of CitizenCon Direct, if you want to come hang out with me and watch CitizenCon Direct live, and the rest of the gang, please hit the Discord link below. Discord.gg/unhinged. That'll get you in. Just click on Star Citizen when you join. There's an event up on the Discord events. We are all counting down the days. I cannot wait to watch it. I would love to get some of you from the channel over there watching it with me. That would be amazing. So put that on your calendar.
Still got some time. Yeah, so in case folks don't know, CitizenCon Direct is coming. It's on October 11th. It's why I'm here in my office and not on the spaceship. We've set the spaceship up as a permanent filming location for CitizenCon. Why is SCL longer than CitizenCon Direct? Because this just takes me and Benoit. This just takes me and Benoit doing absolutely no prep, absolutely no prior discussion. Just like, hey, you want to chat for like 3 hours about all these things? I'm just going to ask you about a bunch of crap, and you're going to, tell the truth. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. And he goes, this is a relatively easy thing. Don't equate length with a difficulty. CitizenCon, even a CitizenCon Direct, still involves 20, 30 different people all doing their part, and we got to work with all their schedules and stuff like that. And then there's editorial, there's editing it all together, because it's like 5 different cameras at 4K each. And then there's all the B-roll creation, which is the same a wonderful dedicated 6-person team that makes all the trailers and all stuff like that. So they got to do that in between the win, and then reviews and reshoots and all that kind of stuff. So don't equate length with quality. Never said those words before. That was for him. He's laughing over there. You can't see him. But I do want to say, if you are some more things about CitizenCon Direct. If you're a subscriber to the Squadron 42 newsletter that went out, that just went out with a map of the Odin system, there was a note at the end there about the Squadron 42 team still being heads down and working on that. I want to second the information there, and I want to star explain. I'm going to start explaining the information that was there. There will be no Squadron 42 presence at CitizenCon Direct this year. So just in case there was any kind of people were like, I didn't quite understand the message, or maybe the message wasn't fully clear and whatnot. And if it wasn't, maybe that was on us. That team is heads down. We drew a line in the sand when we said 2026. I don't know if we're going to make it. I just know that we're going to do every single thing possible to make it. And part of that is not taking time for the distraction of CitizenCon. That's why we're not doing a larger event this year. It's why we're doing a smaller, more focused thing. Even when we did digital CitizenCon, those were still these big.
I don't know if we're going to make it. That's not very reassuring. Is what it is.
Big 6, 8, 10-hour things. We called that CitizenCon. This is not CitizenCon. It's CitizenCon Direct. It's a much smaller, more focused thing, specifically on the work of the Star Citizen team and what they plan for the next year of development. We're not going to look at 1.0 stuff and so like this. It's just we're going to take a look at what the next year of our intention is for that. So it's a much smaller, more dedicated thing. I think you're still going to enjoy it. People who are working on it are doing a lot of really hard work to make it as entertaining and informative as possible. But again, just want to be real clear with the expectations management. No Squadron 42 presence at all. That's not a release date. That's not any of that stuff. We're letting those people stay focused. They're letting those people stay focused. We're on track. There's nothing to report. There's no mystery. There's no anything we're hiding or whatever. It's just like we said when we announced Star Citizen. It's like we said when we announced Star Citizen Direct. We're trying to stay out of everybody's way and let them focus and let them do the work that they're here to do, which is make the game.
It's also a misconception that all the resources are in Squadron 42, right? Like the reality is there's two teams, right? Yeah. And we got to push both games, right? It's super important for that. Now, obviously, Squadron, unfortunately, has got to be under a bit more secrecy, right? Yeah. But
no, it's not a. So I can already see the chat. The chat's already like, oh, it means this, it means that. Folks, it means that when it's time for the game to come out, you're going to hear a lot more about it. It's always been different. We've always been big yappy on Star Citizen and less yappy on Squadron. So it's just an extension of that. It's just as we get closer to our intended release date in 2026, we will start opening up the doors, opening up the communication. You'll start seeing more of all that kind of stuff that you would expect in a proper go-to-market campaign. It's just, we're just doing this. We're staying out of everybody. That's the same thing. That's why there's fewer ISCs this year. It's why there's fewer SCLs this year. We just want the people, as part of this change that we talked about for the first 30 minutes of this show, this reorganizational change, we want people's focus being on making the game. That's it. It's really no more complicated than that. So when the time is right, you'll see plenty of Squadron.
I think that was a sufficient amount of star explaining.
So with that said, that's it. That's our show. 3 hours. Thank you, of course, to Benoit, who flew halfway around the world to sit in a room like 100 meters that way and take the time to sit on the show with us.
I even put my TDK shirt just for you.
I know, because I'm an astute collector of
that's right.
High quality audio cassette tapes. So thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being respectful in chat to your fellow chatters. Saw a lot of folks with a lot of good conversation there. And thank you, as always, again. I did it already, but I'm going to do it again. Benoit, for agreeing to come. I don't know. I've worked a lot of places in my life, and I've been in a lot of studios, and I've never known a CTO to be this willing to come on and share this level of candor and insight with people. So thank you.
I'm glad for it. It's the DNA of our project, man. Got to do it.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Whew. We did it. That was a lot of content, a lot of material. It was was great. I really enjoyed that. 3 hours was a lot to get through. I did this in 3 separate sessions. Hopefully there's some continuity between the videos, and it doesn't feel like bespoke discussions. By the way, I mentioned that I had seen bits and pieces of the live stream. I didn't get to see much of it, but somebody did call my attention to the fact that one or more people called my name out in the chat saying they expected Grolo to do a 10-hour breakdown of the 3-hour video. I saw that. I was aware of it. I think I did this in like 5 or 6. I don't know. I haven't added it up yet, so I think I did well. And whoever that was, I hope you watch and enjoy. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like final thoughts. I don't have a lot. There wasn't any like super new revelations in this. A lot of it was recap, reinforcement of things we already knew. You know, I mean, there was some interesting digging and diving into some of the bugs and why some of the strange behaviors that we're seeing on live are being seen. I think that was probably the most novel stuff in this discussion. It was really, really good to hear in the previous video how things are going and the fact that things are still going with dynamic meshing. You know, I think, yeah. The one thing he mentioned in that was the connection of instancing with dynamic server meshing. He kind of briefly mentioned it, but he didn't really expand upon that too much. And that's a question I have in the back of my mind on exactly how those two things are related, or if it's just more of like a pattern relationship like we talked about before, on how like, you know, building muscles and skills on some systems will benefit you on future systems because of commonalities between the systems. So maybe there's some commonalities between the way they're approaching provisioning of servers and how they're provisioning instanced content. I could see that. As far as the big ticket items, it's good. You know, mostly bug and issue talk. I think they did a pretty good job of talking about just how complex and nuanced these systems are under the hood. And, you know, based on things I've said in the past on this channel and things we've talked about in the comments on many videos, hopefully that gives you some insight as to why it's just not easy to ship polished things on a routine basis in a project that is in the state that this one is in. Whenever you're dealing with this much complexity and this much project girth, if you will. I love Starmesh. That's going to stick with me. And humanity. You know, I thought that was a great call out from Jared. Like, dude, these are humans. They're not going to ship perfect things. Give them the space. And that's it. And again, just a quick reminder, discord.gg/unhinged if you want to come hang out and watch the upcoming CitizenCon live with me and some others from the group. We would love to have you. We're a very welcoming bunch, and I'd love to have more people to bounce ideas and thoughts off of during this thing. It sounds like it's going to be shorter than this video, so you know, we won't be tied up quite as long as we were here. Anyway, drop your thoughts on the big ticket items and the bugs and the issues and kind of the resolutions that Star Citizen and CIG are pushing forward with, according to Benoit. Do you have any thoughts on any of that stuff or anything else at all? Upcoming CitizenCon or anything else? Drop it in the comments, and I can't wait to continue the conversation with you there. Until then, Grolo out.